From the Pep Radio Newsroom, these are the stories we are currently following. LGBTQ Nation is reporting that a House committee just passed a bill that would forcibly out trans students. It was introduced by Representative Tim Walberg from Michigan, who previously advocated for Uganda's gay death law, the Anti-Homosexuality Act. The bill, H.R. 736, also known as the Protect Kids Act, would require elementary and middle schools to forcibly out trans kids to their parents if they ask to go by new pronouns or a new name, or use the facilities associated with their gender. If schools failed to comply, they would risk losing all federal funding. The bill was introduced in February of last year and was referred to the Committee on Education and the Workforce. It was voted out of committee on a 22-12 vote this week and will now be going to the House floor for a possible vote. If it passes the Republican House, the bill will face an uphill battle in the Democratic Senate, and President Joe Biden is unlikely to sign it, considering it contradicts guidance issued by his administration. In insurance news today, 3 transgender women from across the U.S. filed a federal class action civil rights lawsuit against Aetna Life Insurance Company after the women were denied coverage for gender-affirming facial procedures. Announced Tuesday, the complaint said the Hartford-based company refused to pay for these surgeries based on a policy that excludes gender-affirming facial procedures from the types of medically necessary gender-affirming surgery they cover. The policy, CPB 0615, states that gender-affirming facial procedures are cosmetic and medically unnecessary. All the plaintiffs were diagnosed with gender dysphoria for several years before seeking out the procedures. They had received other types of gender-affirming care, but were denied facial surgeries due to the policy. The complaint states that the denial violates Section 1557 of the Affordable Care Act, which prohibits discrimination based on sex in federally funded healthcare programs. Gender dysphoria symptoms can be addressed through gender-affirming medical care like hormone treatment, surgery, and procedures, including facial surgery. A UCLA study found that trans patients who received gender-affirming facial feminization surgery reported better mental health after their procedures. According to the complaints, all the plaintiffs were on health plans offered by Aetna and were receiving gender-affirming care to treat their gender dysphoria and further their transition. Turning to news from Florida, the Bozeman Daily Chronicle is reporting that a school district in Northeast Florida must put back in libraries 36 books as part of a settlement reached Thursday with students and parents who sued over what they said was an unlawful decision to limit access to dozens of titles containing LGBTQ+ content. Under the agreement, the School Board of Nassau County must restore access to 36 titles, including And Tango Makes Three, a children's picture book based on a true story about 2 male penguins that raised a chick together at New York's Central Park Zoo. Authors Peter Parnell and Justin Richardson were plaintiffs in the lawsuit against the district, which is about 35 miles northeast of Jacksonville along the Georgia border. The suit was one of several challenges to book bans since state lawmakers last year passed and Republican Governor Ron DeSantis signed into law legislation making it easier to challenge educational materials that opponents consider pornographic and obscene. Last month, 6 major publishers and several well-known authors filed a federal lawsuit in Orlando, arguing that some provisions of the law violate their First Amendment rights and those of publishers, other authors, and students. The Meadville Tribune is reporting that former President Donald Trump will campaign Friday in Western states as his opponent, Vice President Kamala Harris, keeps her focused on one of the biggest battleground prizes in the East, Pennsylvania. Trump is scheduled to hold what's being billed as a news conference at his Los Angeles area golf club. He'll speak at the Seaside Club perched on a cliff overlooking the Pacific Ocean before heading to Northern California for a fundraiser, followed by a rally in Las Vegas, the largest city in swing state, Nevada. Harris, meanwhile, heads to Johnstown and Wilkes-Barre on Friday, campaigning in counties where Trump won in 2016 and 2020 as she tries to capitalize on her momentum after Tuesday night's debate. It's her second day of back-to-back rallies after holding 2 events in North Carolina, another swing state, on Thursday. Her campaign is aiming to hit every market and every battleground state over 4 days, with stops by Harris and her running mate, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, and other surrogates in Michigan, Wisconsin, Arizona, and Georgia. While speaking in Charlotte, Harris took a victory lap for her debate performance in which she needled Trump and kept him on the defensive. Recounting one moment while campaigning in North Carolina, she mocked Trump for saying he had, quote, concepts of a plan for replacing the Affordable Care Act. She went on to say, concepts? Concepts. No actual plan. Concepts, she said as the crowd roared with laughter. Her campaign said she raised $47 million from 600,000 donors in the 24 hours after her debate with Trump. And that's the news for this hour. Let's get back to more music on PEP Radio.